It's not a bad idea for any international travelers or people considering traveling internationally here to rivet your license plates onto your vehicle. My advice, I guess, would just be do it. Make it happen. Like take the leap of faith. Take the action that propels you towards your dreams. Don't just talk about doing it, but actually do it. Mexico is a great, beautiful country filled with hospitable people, kind people, humble people, hardworking people. We love this place, and we would highly recommend anyone come to visit.
Don't compare yourself to other people. Don't let work rob you of the time that you should be spending with your loved ones or doing the things that make you you.
You're listening to the GHT Overland podcast.
You are awesome. And now it's time to escape into the GHT Overland podcast. Thanks for joining the crew as we discover new adventures, learning from experienced overland travelers and adventure enthusiasts just like you, as we share their campfire stories, experience, and insights. It's not just pure classic overland adventure anymore. We're chasing a variety of adventures in remote, wild places only explored by adventure seekers much like you, with guts, with grit, and by those who exemplify the finest in human nature with a deep love for others, along with the wild beauty of our world. Do make note, this is the grown-up adult version, not soaked in explicitives. However, we're no longer removing those passionate raw words that sometimes are just the way we and our guests express exuberance.
This episode is brought to you by GHT Overland. We're now recording a new YouTube channel of our adventures. Our first full introductory episode goes live Sunday morning, December 12th. We will be focused on quality over quantity as we get started, focused on recording the beauty of the wild places we visit with minimal conversations by us. In addition, we will record a series of overland cooking by myself, along with in-person interviews with fellow overland travelers, a bit later down the road. Just search GHT Overland on YouTube. We'd love your support. At minimum, please take a second to leave a rating on iTunes with anything from a one-word review to whatever you're feeling. You hear it on every podcast, so yes, it's that important. Without constant iTunes love, we're just a sludge at the bottom of a lost cold coffee cup. You can also support the show on Patreon. As time goes, Patreon will be the place we upload higher quality videos than YouTube allows, inside data on places we explore and love, along with pre-release downloads to our primary content. GHT stands for gratitude, humility, and tenacity. These are our three primary pillars of life. Taking it to the next level, we're adding in the rest of our pillars. With love at the core, purpose is our foundation, and no matter the obstacle or challenge, we always continue to move forward. And now you know, yes, it's the mysterious little logo you sometimes see in a post, on a video, and tattoos. Thank you for joining us as we pursue a renewed life mission of putting the best in people and nature on display, while tackling the Goliath of today by consistently placing positivity and respect for others in front of everything else.
In today's show, and as always, we are honored and humbled to have this week's guest join us from central Mexico. They left a carnival of fun and delicious food behind just to chat with us and to share their insights and experiences with you. One of the most naturally talented couples we've met in passing along their experience by teaching and sharing with such openness. Eric and Brittany bring it in this return episode after we first had them on the podcast in April of 2019 in episode 83 and 84.
Today, as Hourless Life, Eric, Brittany, and their 5-year-old son Caspian are in their first leg of overlanding the world over the next 5+ years in their new Jeep Gladiator. So many great stories with so much value in their experience as full-time travelers since 2014.
Caspian, a belated happy birthday to you, young man. Make sure Dad's Roxanne solos are limited, okay? All right, Lisa, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. Thank you guys for taking the time to join us on the podcast today. And as Lisa said just a little bit ago, a very happy 1-year birthday as Hourless Life.
Yay! Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Yeah. So can you give us a little bit of an inside scoop on the name change?
So we had 2 travel blogs before. We had RV Wanderlust that had represented our full-time RV travel since February 2014. And then along the way, when we got our Jeep Wrangler, Eric started Jeepsies, another travel blog and brand, to talk about off-roading and the Jeep life, which eventually morphed into our overlanding content. But as we started to get ready to begin driving around the world, which we were just dreaming about last time we talked to you guys.
Yeah.
When was that? The beginning of 2019, I think, that we did that interview?
Good memory. Yes, it was the spring. I believe it was April of 2019. You guys were on episode 83 and 84.
Yeah, and we had just come back from interior Mexico then,
Yep.
Our first trip to Mexico. And so we were so inspired. We had the wind in our sails, but driving around the world was still pretty far away then. But as we got closer and closer, we realized that our old brand identities were not going to be a good fit for us anymore. And we needed a new identity as a family to talk about our travels and share with others. And that's how Hourless Life came about.
We love it.
So speaking of Mexico, we're sitting here, Portland, rainy, 45 degrees. Tell us where you're at, and please describe the weather in grand detail. I'll live vicariously through you.
Sure. We are in Guanajuato, the capital city of the state of Guanajuato, deep in the interior of Mexico. It was a beautiful sunny day today. High was 73. The low will drop to 39.
Yeah, it was
So it gets cool at night.
It does. We're at elevation, so when the sun goes down, it gets cool pretty quickly. But it was a beautiful sunny day today. We were walking around in t-shirts and light pants, and really could not ask for a more beautiful day. The weather is perfect this time of year.
So an umbrella drink for breakfast and a hot toddy for bedtime.
You guys would not believe the food options that are available to us, literally steps from where we're staying here in Guanajuato. And, one of the things is this is an Overland podcast. One of the things that I did want to mention in this podcast is that, when you're doing an overland journey of this magnitude of what Brittany and I are doing, which we anticipate will be a 10 to 15 year journey around the world, you need to make it sustainable. And I think that sometimes, especially in North America, people have this idea that overlanding is, packing up your stuff into a vehicle, often going off-road. Maybe you've got a rooftop tent or a fridge or whatever, and you go off-grid and you go camping for a few days and then you go home, or maybe even a week-long trip. But when you're doing a 10 to 15 year journey, you have to make it sustainable. And so for us, for right now, for example, we're in Guanajuato, Mexico for 42 more days, I think, Brittany, is that right?
Something like that.
Yeah. We're here for a total of 6 weeks in one city, and we're in an Airbnb. And some people might say, well, that's not overlanding. Well, let me tell you something. What we are doing is overlanding. This is overlanding. We are driving from here. Eventually, we'll make it into Central America, South America. We'll ship the vehicle to Africa. We'll get up into Europe. We'll cross into Asia. We'll end up in Australia. And eventually, we'll come back to the United States. But it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, you know. And so we get to enjoy this. We get to make it sustainable by staying in certain locations for an extended period of time, really get involved in the microcultures that we're experiencing, the various history and things that we get to learn, the people that we get to meet.
Make friends.
We get to make friends, you know, and that type of thing. And it's what helps make this journey sustainable. I think sometimes people have it in their mind that we're driving every day and we're popping the tent every day and that we're living outside every day. And we do a lot of that. You know, don't think that that's not what this journey is, because that is a huge part of this journey, but it also is broken up with ways in which we keep it sustainable. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there for your audience.
What inspired you to do a nice slow travel like that and not be in a big rush trying to get from point A to point B, boom, 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 and have a tight schedule to get to each place?
It's something you have to learn from experience. And when we started traveling full time in 2014, we were so excited to finally be on the road. We had been getting ready for years to travel full time, building up our businesses and all the logistics of it. And we just wanted to go and see everything and do everything. And I think that's common. Everyone has that in common when they first hit the road, whether it's a 2-week vacation or full-time travel. But we learned really quickly in 2014 that if we traveled at that pace, we were going to burn out and we wouldn't be able to hack it. And so at that time, we developed a travel rhythm, we slowed down, and that's why we've been able to travel full-time for almost 8 years now, is that we've learned that you have to slow down. And it's not just for your sanity, it's also for the richness of your travels. Because if you're just going for a day, you're just going to get to the surface level, and you can still have wonderful experiences, but you won't really get to the depth of the culture. And that's something that we really like to do as we travel.
And there's also a big difference between overlanding and full-time overlanding, right? So overlanding, if you go for a weekend, or let's say you go for a week-long adventure or even a month-long adventure, you know, it's what you're doing. Right? That is all that you're doing. You're overlanding, you're experiencing that, and that's great. We love doing that. We've done a lot of that. But full-time overlanding is life. It's not just overlanding. So we still need to do laundry, and we still need to go to the grocery store, and we still need to pay our taxes and collect our mail and, you know, do all of those things that people normally do in life.
Yeah, there's no home base to go back to and regroup.
Right.
And so we have to build it all in. All the laundry and all the groceries and all the doctors and dentist visits. I actually went to the dentist today. So all of that has to be built in.
Yeah. It's life. And that's the important thing to remember. That is the differentiator between full-time overlanding and overlanding in general. Full-time overlanding, it's life. And so you don't escape life by becoming a full-time overlander. It just makes it more logistically challenging.
That is awesome. So teaching and sharing your experiences and lessons learned seem to come really natural for you guys. What Brittany just said, getting into that travel rhythm, I don't know that I've heard that before. That's got to be really insightful for a lot of people that are looking to do a trip like yours. What other advice do you generally give, whether you're at Overland Expo or wherever you're giving a class, your YouTube videos? I think we've spent the last 2 or 3 weeks catching up on all your videos.
Thank you.
And you guys are so great at teaching and and just sharing your experiences. Like, where does that come from?
We have a heart for that. We love sharing with other people, and we're sincere when we say on our platforms, whether it's Instagram or YouTube or Facebook, that we want to be a resource for people. You know, when we started this type of travel back in 2014, there weren't a lot of younger people that were doing this type of full-time travel. The term digital nomadism or remote work really was not a thing in 2014. And we didn't have that resource to reach out to, and we wish we had. And there were a few people, there were a handful of people that we could reach out to, but it wasn't commonplace where you could just go online and search for digital nomad or remote work or those types of things. And so we want to be a resource for people who have questions, because we know what it's like to be on the other side where you have all these questions and you don't have a place to go to get those things. So we have a passion for sharing these things, whether it's a public speaking event at Overland Expo, here on a podcast, or even one-on-one in person. We spend a lot of time with individuals talking about the lessons that we've learned along the way.
Well, you do a really good job at it. It seems to come very natural. So thank you. We've learned a lot from you, and I'm sure there's thousands of other people that have as well. And in watching your YouTube channels, we feel a little more akin to you with your businesses that you've started and stopped and started and stopped. And when you were going through, we had this business and then this one. I was like, God, that sounds like so I guess I just wanted to mention that. Not really a question built in there.
Yeah, no, we totally relate to that. And we've talked about it a few times. We have a video called The Long Game that's basically about the past decade that brought us to where we are. When people first start following us in whatever platform, it's easy to kind of just assume that maybe we woke up one day and decided to drive around the world and we had the resources and the knowledge to do that, but that could not be farther from the truth. It's literally been a decade to get us to this point. And then I also just wrote a really long article called How We Afford to Travel Full Time, which is usually the first question that people ask us when they meet us is, how can you afford to do that? So I just wrote a really, really long article that is not meant to just satisfy people's curiosity, but it's actually for people who may be wanting to do what we're doing. So I go into major detail and talk about all those businesses, the 5 different business projects that we built up over the past 8 years and how that all shook out.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And you tackle working remotely and finances so gracefully with such open and honesty on at least where we've seen it from your YouTube channel. For our listeners, if you would name maybe 3 other ways that you've seen other people being able to make a living on the road, what would those be?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that I mentioned in my article is that you can be an RV inspector. So you can work within the RV industry and you can get certified and then you can inspect RVs for potential buyers. That's something that you can do remotely. Obviously, there's things like traveling nurses, which require a little bit more training and certification, but that's an option that a lot of people are doing right now. There's mobile mechanics, there's fulfilling orders in Amazon warehouses, which is usually a seasonal job that a lot of people do. And then there's always work camping, which you would normally do at a campground where maybe your site is paid for and you get a small salary while you're there, but you're doing things like working in the office or maintaining the grounds. And other than the traveling nurse, these are all pretty easy things to get started with. They don't require a college degree or anything like that. And that's why I include them in my article, because for people who just want to get out there, maybe give full-time travel a try, or, they just don't want to put it off anymore, there are ways to get out there pretty quickly and get started and at least see if it's something that you enjoy. And then maybe you can work on building something else, maybe your dream job, your dream business that might take a little while to get up and running.
Brittany, where's the best place for people to find that article?
If they go to hourlesslife.com, we have a search bar that they'll see, and the article is called How We Afford to Travel Full-Time. And the bottom part of the article, so the first part of the article is our story, our very, very long story. And then the bottom section of the article is just kind of general resources. So some of the job ideas that I just gave you, as well as some other resources on how to get internet while you're traveling and other things like that.
Either for you specifically, or what advice do you give people on setting a monthly budget?
Budget is a really funny thing. So there are people, you may not believe me, but there are people out there who are traveling full time on a budget of $500 a month. And I kid you not, they might be sitting in Arizona somewhere and not really going anywhere very often. But, you can travel really inexpensively. And then, of course, if you get outside the United States, well, all bets are off because the cost of living in the United States is so high compared to pretty much the rest of the world. So there are people out there doing it for $500, and there are people out there doing it with a budget of $5,000. And it really is no different from quote unquote normal life. We all earn different amounts, and most of us spend all the money that we earn every month. So, you kind of just adjust up and down depending on what your income is. And that's what we've done. I mean, at the height of our business success, we didn't really need to think about, can we afford to eat out tonight? We could just go and do that sort of thing. And then as we started to shut down our businesses because we were getting ready to do this global travel, we had to tighten our belts and cut back. And it just takes self-discipline. There's really no magic to it. It just takes self-discipline. And it can be really helpful to make a spreadsheet with all of your different line items and see where you're at and try and stick to that. But there's another piece to it too, a couple other pieces. One is debt. So I would definitely encourage anyone who's looking to travel extensively to work on paying down their debt, to be really careful about the debt that they take on to travel. And so maybe we're not going to buy that $200,000 fancy overland vehicle if it means that we're strapped with a monthly payment every month.
I got a friend named Dan Greck. You may know him as The Road Chose Me. And he's got a great story. When he first started overlanding, he bought a used Jeep, threw a backpack into it. And the one luxury item that he took was his pillow, because he liked his pillow from home. He threw that in the Jeep, and he drove all the way down the Pan American to Ushuaia and the southern tip of Argentina in a used Jeep, which I think he paid like $5,000 for, and he had a backpack and a pillow, right? And so the idea is, and this is something, you asked earlier, Chris, what we talk about when we're teaching. We say start with what you have. When you're talking about budget, you don't have to go overboard. You don't have to have that $200,000 overlanding rig to be able to do a journey of a lifetime, right? You need to cover 5 basics. You need to have water, food, shelter, warmth, or the ability to create warmth, and sleep. And that's it. And if you can cover those 5 things, you can go anywhere in the world. And you don't need to have an off-road vehicle. I'll tell you, you'll go on some off-road trail here in Mexico, for example, and we go up there in our Jeep, and then some guy who's like 73 years old passes us in a rusted, broken down Nissan that's seen much better days. And this is his daily commute, and it really puts it in perspective. Like, what do you really need to go overlanding? What do you really need to get out there and experience life? And one of the very first things we speak about when we're on any kind of stage is that stuff is a poor substitute for experience. And it's all about the experience. I mean, the things are nice to have, and they help you get around. And, we're gear sponsored by 27 different companies, but it's not about their gear. I mean, we're really thankful for it. But at the end of the day, it's just stuff. what counts is the experience, and that's what you take away from overlanding.
Right, and we don't want to spend so much on our vehicle that we don't have anything left over to travel with.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, I think for so many of us who maybe we only have the 2 weeks of vacation a year, and we spend the rest of the year dreaming about those 2 weeks and what we're going to do with them. And well, what can we do while we're waiting for vacation? We could go on Amazon and buy things and make our vehicle cooler. And I totally understand that. Like, I validate that and where that's coming from. But what if instead of getting like a SEMA level vehicle ready, we put that money away in savings and maybe could afford to take some unpaid vacation? You know, it's all perspective, and there's different ways of looking at our lives to accomplish our dreams. And sometimes that requires getting out of the box.
And one of the things I always say, you guys, is that you can always make more money, but you can never make more time. And so time is the most valuable asset that we have. And it's how you spend that that makes the difference in your life. And so you can choose to spend that time making more money so that you can get more stuff, or you can choose to spend that time doing something memorable because you don't know how much time you got left. And so it's kind of a balance, and you have to make that decision for yourself. And the only person that can make that is you. But for us, we've decided it's time to go.
I think there's a lot of wisdom there gained from experience. And then I immediately think of the guy that's traveling the world and has been for, I forget how many years, on a Vespa. So you can go in the SEMA vehicle all the way down to a Vespa,
right,
and travel the world. And it's really whatever your style is and whatever conveniences or comforts you want that are going to require more of a financial investment to do that.
Yeah, there's a gentleman from Asia, and I believe his username on Instagram is something like the Turban Traveler. Mm-hmm. And he is traveling all over Asia in a sedan. And I can't spout off all the details of it because I'm really not a vehicle person, but it is literally a car, and he is driving across Asia in it. He is really awesome. And so he's just another example of what you can do and where you can go without needing that tricked out 4x4 vehicle.
Yeah, his name is Amarjeet. That's his actual name, but like Brittany says, he goes by the Turban Traveler on Instagram, and he's out there doing it.
Yeah, he's awesome.
That's awesome. And you guys have been wanting to travel the globe and kind of get out of the U.S. and stretch your legs a little bit. Now that you're in Mexico on that first leg of your journey, how exciting is that for you? How do you guys feel about being able to actually be on the road and you crossed the border? Your Spanish is awesome, by the way. And now you're in mid-Mexico. How does that feel?
It's an incredible feeling. It is the realization of our dreams. And I think that anyone who gets to that point where they finally cross that threshold and they realize that everything that they've worked for, everything that they've dreamed of, they're finally doing, and it hits them. In that moment that it hits them, it is such an incredible and special and unique feeling. And so we're still soaking it in. I mean,
it's still a little surreal.
We crossed the border on October 9th to start this global journey. And it's been just a little over a month that we've been down here in Mexico. And we've got about 4.5 more months to enjoy this country before we head into Central America. And, you know, it's hard sometimes to really grasp the depth of what we've just begun.
Maybe the permanence of it.
Yeah.
Because when we've come to Mexico before, you know, you realize that, oh, I'm about to run out of my favorite soap. Oh, it's okay. I'll be back at an REI in a few weeks. It was funny. I was asking for shoe recommendations in the Women Overlanding the World Facebook group the other day. And this really sweet, well-meaning person commented, oh, yeah, you can just go pick them up at REI. And I was like, well, it'll be a couple years before I'm anywhere near an REI when I fly back to visit the US, but I really appreciate the thought. It was funny.
I think you'll be designing your own shoes quickly.
Oh, yeah. I don't know about that, but I will make do.
We are about 25 minutes from León, Mexico, which is in Guanajuato, and it is the leather capital of Mexico. They've got an entire market of leather goods. And matter of fact, some of the most famous like cowboy boots and stuff are made there in León.
Yeah, from U.S. companies.
Yeah, but all of their stuff is really, really high end. And so we might just have to go down there and pick up Brittany some shoes.
There you go.
How is Caspian liking the trip so far?
He loves it. I have to tell you something special. You guys are going to be the very first people outside of our family that have heard this. But today, Caspian had his very first full-on conversation in Spanish with a local woman, where I didn't help him.
Oh, how great is that?
I didn't guide him. He spoke to her. He asked her name. He said it was nice to meet her. He told her his age.
That was awesome.
He said he was doing well. And I was just standing there in awe. Like I was waiting for him to say, Daddy, how do I say this? He was just having a conversation. I was like, wow. Yeah.
That's going to make you proud.
Yeah, it does. Very, very much so.
That's awesome. Remind me, how old is he?
He's 4 now, but he's just about to turn 5 in December.
That's great. And so I love the picture you guys posted yesterday in the same spot you were in early 2019.
Yeah, right before
How
we
did it
talked
feel
to you
take that picture?
guys. Yeah, that was fun to retake that. And for me, I was just holding Caspian. I was like, oh my gosh, you're so big. What is going
So much
on?
bigger.
Yeah, I didn't even want to pick him up because he was so big. And Eric was like, pick him up. We're recreating the photo. It's like, okay.
You got to have the picture. It's awesome.
Yeah, Eric's like, put him on your hip. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, I hope your back is feeling okay after that. So how's the first leg of your trip going? Is it going as you planned? Any hiccups so far?
No hiccups other than what just got published today in our YouTube video.
Yeah, we
had a funny story that happened.
So we stayed in the city of San Luis Potosí for our first month, and that was a place that we went back to from 2019 because we enjoyed it so much. And then right after San Luis Potosí, we spent a few days exploring this tropical region of interior Mexico called La Huasteca, which overlaps 7 different Mexican states. And it's on the northeastern side of interior Mexico, fairly close to the Gulf. And it is literally tropical. You know, it rains and it doesn't dry. It stays really wet. And there's waterfalls and there's turquoise waters. And so it was so amazing to spend a few days there. We're super excited to share it in our video today. But we did have a very challenging day while we were there where nothing went right.
And before you ask, Chris, I'm just going to take responsibility because ultimately it was my fault. I went to the front desk. So we went to this resort. We went to this resort, a camping resort, but they also have like yurts and cabins and stuff like that you can stay. But we just wanted to park. We wanted a flat, level, legal, secure place to park so we could pop the tent. And they allowed us to park there. So we parked there. Come to find out, we're the only people at this resort. So the only people there were the staff, Brittany, Caspian, and I. And there's these hammocks and pathways, and you walk down to the water, and it's this turquoise water with waterfalls and lagoons and Spanish moss, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And that's part of what we just released in the video that went up today. Well, I went up to the front desk and I was like, hey, listen, we want to get some breakfast. Is there anywhere close by? And they said, oh, yeah, if you just go up the street and make a right. Go up to the street is what they said. Go up to the street and make a right. And you walk down about 10 more minutes and there's a place right there called Las Raíces. Really good food. You'll enjoy that. I said, great. So we walk out of the campground and there's this little dirt road off to the right, but that's not the street. And they told me the street. So I walked up to the main street and we went to the right. And 2 hours later, we were not at breakfast. And so we ended up getting completely lost. We went to this other restaurant, which was closed. We ran into this guy named Leonardo, who was a local, had lived there for 30 years. I got to talking to him. He's like, yeah, just take these little steps right here. And when I say steps, they're like these dilapidated concrete steps next to some big tube through a tunnel. And we're looking at it like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah, just go down those steps and keep following them. And eventually you'll get to food. Well, you get to the other side of this little tunnel and it looks like something out of a Dr. Seuss book. It's like 300 or 400 stairs that are going down to the bottom where the water is. And we get to the bottom and the door is locked. Mm-hmm. And yeah. And then Brittany notices this other path that goes off in another direction at the bottom of the steps. And so we head down over there and we open this door and there's like Tecate umbrellas and these waterfalls and this cascading water and kayaks. And all of a sudden we're like in this little resort area. So it was a whole thing. But bottom line was, it was about our attitude. It was like, our day was kind of ruined, to be honest with you.
We had plans for the whole day.
But we got to experience something else. And in the video, we talk about something that we often teach on, which is that overlanding is about the journey. It's not about the destination. And like Brittany said in the video, that's really easy to say. And it sounds really cool to say because that's an overlanding thing to communicate. It's a whole different thing to live that, right? When you have plans for the day and your 15-minute breakfast outing turns into a 2-hour misadventure.
With your poor 4-year-old.
With your 4-year-old.
Walk 2 miles while his parents were lost.
Yeah. Can you.
And everybody's hungry.
Yeah, and everybody's hungry and tired and sweaty. Can you still enjoy that? Can you still get something out of that? And we did. Like if you watch the video, you'll see that, we really made the most of this misadventure. And it all ended up being fine in the end. And now we have stories to tell around a campfire or to share on a podcast about what we saw and what we did that was completely unexpected. And there's one point in time in the video where Brittany turns and she says, if we hadn't gotten lost, we wouldn't have seen any of this. And that's really a profound statement. It was a beautiful statement from Brittany, but that speaks to this type of lifestyle, this journey, overlanding in general, really being about the journey and not the destination.
That's such a great story. So on your Jeep, mm-hmm. I would love the quick 30,000-foot view rundown on the new Jeep.
Sure. So we just published an article. Brittany just published one on hourlesslife.com called Complete Jeep Gladiator Overland Build, now on YouTube. So we have an entire playlist of our Jeep Gladiator build available.
Not the 30,000 foot.
Not the 30,000 foot view. Literally everything we've ever done to it.
Yeah, it goes into detail. It was great.
From the day that we bought it, I think it's like a 6-part series. And then there's this article. But the 30,000 foot view is that it's a 2021 Jeep Gladiator. It's a Sport S is the trim with the max tow package. And the reason for that is that specific trim on the Gladiator has the highest payload capacity that you can get in a Jeep Gladiator. The manual transmission actually has a 1,700 pound payload. We opted for the automatic transmission, which has a 1,565 pound payload. So you lose 135 pounds of payload by getting the automatic, but that's what we opted for. And then on it, we have the Alucab Canopy Camper, which is our home. It's the habitat that sits on the back. We've got a Goose Gear interior storage system. We have an entire electrical system from Red Arc, which manages all of our electronic components, to a Renogy battery that's 170 amp hours. We have 3 solar panels that are Cascadia 4x4 solar panels that are providing power to that battery. We've got an auxiliary fuel tank from Long Range America on there. We've upgraded the suspension. We've got Dobinson springs and a Mopar 2-inch lift. We've got Warn wheels, a Warn winch, Rigid Industries lights. I mean, it's really decked out. We've done a lot to it. But like I said, as cool as it is, and I want to make this very clear to anyone listening, it is a very cool Jeep. I'm not going to lie. I look at it and I'm like, wow, I still can't believe that's our Jeep. It's really nice. I get it. But at the end of the day, it's a vehicle.
It's a tool.
It's a tool that allows us to accomplish the realization of our dreams of driving around the world. And that's what's important. It's not the Jeep that's important so much as what it allows us to do.
How much water can you guys carry?
So we have an Alucab water tank on board. So we have 13 gallons of fresh water.
Okay.
Inside the Jeep. We also carry a Lifesaver, which is a water purification jerry can. And that carries, I want to say, 4.5 gallons. Does that sound right? Yeah. So we have 4.5 gallons in there and 13 gallons in the tank. So we're carrying about 17.5 gallons of water.
And so for filtering, are you just using the Lifesaver, or do you have some other means of filtering water?
Great question, Chris. So what we have is we have a potable water hose, kind of like you'd buy at an RV store, and we have inline filters like you would use at an RV campground, so that when we're filling from a spigot, it'll go through those filters and it goes that way into the main tank, which is the Alucab water tank that holds 13 gallons. And then that tank has 2 spigots.
Oh, okay.
It has a gravity-fed spigot on the passenger side of the vehicle and a water pump on the driver's side of the vehicle for our shower. But what we do is we take water out of that main tank and keep our Lifesaver topped off. And the only water that we use for drinking comes out of that Lifesaver. So even though it's filtered going into the Alucab tank, it's double filtered by the time it ever goes into our stomachs.
Okay, that makes sense. And then fuel, how much fuel can you carry, and how far does that take you?
Yeah, so the stock Gladiator will carry 22 gallons of fuel. We have a 17-gallon external fuel tank by Long Range America, so we have the ability to carry 39 gallons of fuel, though we don't always keep that topped off. And the reason for that is that it adds weight. Right. And at the end of the day, weight is your enemy. And so if we don't need to keep it fully topped off, we don't. But there are times when either we find really cheap fuel and we want to take advantage of that, or we know we're going to an extended remote area where we might not be able to get good fuel. Then we'll go ahead and fill up the full 39 gallons.
Right. So we can go, I'd say, almost 600 miles if we were to fill the whole thing up, depending on the terrain. Obviously not up mountains, but on fairly level ground.
Okay. And is everything working as expected? Have you had to make any changes or fixes so far?
No, everything's firing on all cylinders so far, knock on wood, with the vehicle. The only issue that we had is that somebody did try and steal our front license plate at some point in time. We don't know when it happened. They didn't get away with it, but somebody was definitely working on it.
Why would they want your front license plate? Is there something I should be aware of?
No, any U.S. license plate could be a collector's item. And it's just it's a target of opportunity. Okay. Just like I know many American friends from when I was younger that came home from Europe with German license plates. They're just cool things to have, and so,
Got it. Okay.
But having said that, what we did is on our license plates, we don't have the standard, like a Phillips head screwdriver, bolt or anything that's in there holding it in. We have almost some specialty hardware that you would need a special tool to remove those license plates. And we've even talked to some other international overlanders that recommend riveting the license plates on to your vehicle.
Because if they did take off with it, that would give you a little bit of a problem with law enforcement there in Mexico, right?
Yeah, it could. Matter of fact, law enforcement oftentimes, if you're parked illegally here in Mexico and you're not with the vehicle, they'll take your license plate to the police station.
Oh.
So that you have to go to the police station to pay your multa, your fine, and go recover your license plate from them.
That's one way to do it. Okay.
Yeah, they get you to go and pay your fine for sure. But yeah, actually, it's not a bad idea for any international travelers or people considering traveling internationally here to rivet your license plates onto your vehicle.
Okay. Solar, battery, what do you got going there? Sure.
So our electrical system is actually really complex, and we have, I want to say, about a 30-minute video just on our electrical systems. But the nickel version is that we have the 170 amp hour lithium battery by Renogy that is providing all of the power to the house or to the habitat portion of the vehicle. That battery is then managed or controlled by our Red Arc electronic system. We have a Manager 30, which controls all the inputs to the vehicle. And then we have the Red Vision system, which controls all of the outputs of the power that's going in there. It's a really fascinating electrical management system that Red Arc has put together. Very, very green in that it prioritizes solar energy 100% of the time, so that if I'm parked somewhere and the sun's beating down on the vehicle, our battery's not even getting touched. In other words, the power goes directly from the solar panels to the Manager 30 that then decides how to route that power before it ever sends it to the battery.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Really, really fantastic. And then we have 3 solar panels, one on the hood, which is an 80-watt solar panel, and then 2 on top of the canopy camper that are 100 watts each. Those are all by Cascadia 4x4.
That's right. I saw on your hood. Where did they get that? I've never seen one of those.
Yeah.
So smart. We love how they use that real estate on the hood for solar, because you're not going to use it for anything else.
Exactly. Yeah, that was super cool. On another note, for internet service, one of the things we've done is I've canceled, like Comcast, all internet service coming in so that we can kind of prepare, see what works, what doesn't work. And it's a big challenge right now. So what are you guys using for both cell service and making sure that you can stay connected to the internet to post your videos?
Yeah. Remember that question you had about hiccups on our travel so far? So
Yeah, no, I mean, AT&T works really well in Mexico, and it worked well in 2019, and they've expanded their presence here. There's a ton of AT&T stores now, every city that we go to in Mexico. So if that is an Overlanders destination, I would highly recommend just sticking with AT&T and don't mess with it. However,
we're not staying just in Mexico.
And so we had to plan really big picture. And for the time being, we decided to go with Google Fi. And so my phone is completely on Google Fi right now. Eric still has AT&T, and because he has a newer iPhone, he's able to use what's called an eSIM with Google Fi, which is it's not a physical SIM card. It's electronic that you download onto the phone. So he has both AT&T and Google Fi on his phone. Google Fi has been good. The setup was really rough, and Google Fi is not really meant to work with iPhones. It works better with Android and with the Google phone. And so there's some limitations and things that don't work on the iPhone. So that was a lot to navigate up front. And we did have quite a few issues for a few days. But now just using it on a daily basis as far as data goes, it's been great. And I have really good coverage. We were somewhere the other day in La Huasteca going through the mountains.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the heck, Eric? We thought we were going to get to go off grid. And I have like 3 bars 3G going through mountain curves right now. What gives?
Yeah.
Awesome. I don't want the service now. Can they turn it off?
And then in addition, we also have, what is it called? The Skyroam?
We also have it's called the Skyroam, and this is a hotspot. So like you might have a Verizon hotspot or something like that, like we used to have in the States. And so you can pay for it on like a daily basis or a monthly basis. It's really versatile, and it works in, I want to say, 120 different countries. And so it's giving off a Wi-Fi signal that you can tether your phones or your computers to. And we haven't needed to use it, so we haven't used it, and I can't testify to how it works, but everything we've heard about it has been positive. And so as soon as we go out of Mexico, I'm sure it's going to be a really great tool.
Yeah, you'll have to reconnect with us once we're in Central America, and we'll give you an update.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely stay connected.
What did you change about your kitchen setup And then your favorite family recipe.
So the biggest thing that we changed with the kitchen setup and the Jeep in general is that we now have no propane. And it's not that propane isn't available around the world, because it is, but every country has different fittings to refill your propane. And so assuming you did your research and even knew what all the fittings were, you would be carrying around a lot of fittings. And we decided we were not going to do that for something as essential as kitchen fuel and fuel for our heater. So everything is gasoline. We have a Coleman dual fuel stove that runs on either white gas or unleaded fuel. And it's been good. Obviously, with any new stove, you have to learn it a little bit. But overall, it's been really reliable, and I'm really happy with that choice. And my kitchen setup is really simple. And so that's the biggest change that we've made is the stove. And as far as a favorite recipe, well, we really like our chili that we make. I actually need to make it again in a few days. But Eric's shaking his head because I think his favorite is it my pork chops? So I make a pork chop. It's pork chops with bacon on it, with a sauce made with sauteed onions. And yeah, it is our favorite meal.
It is so good.
And we usually do asparagus on the side.
You add bacon into anything, you have my attention.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, it's like pork and pork, and so it doesn't get much better.
That's awesome. So since we last talked, what are some places that you guys have been in? Maybe there's an experience that comes immediate to mind that was really epic, awesome, beyond what you imagined, that you might be able to share with us.
So epic, awesome spots that we've been to. I'm gonna kind of throw myself under the bus here. So when we decided that we were coming into Mexico to start the global portion of the journey, Brittany and I each decided that we would get to pick a city that we would each get to stay in for an extended period of time. Okay. I picked San Luis Potosí because we were there in 2019 and I fell in love with it. And I told Brittany back then in 2019, and I told her again during this trip, I could live here. That means a lot because there's not been any other place that I've ever said that about. Like I have wanderlust to the extreme. And so I want to continuously travel. I have no plans on stopping traveling. But for me to say that I could live in a specific city, that says a lot. And Brittany's pick was Guanajuato, which is where we're at right now. And I was thinking to myself, I know it's supposed to be pretty, and I know it's supposed to be this, that, and the other thing, but it's not going to be better in San Luis Potosí. Chris and Lisa, I wasn't here a day and a half before I had to concede that Brittany's pick was far superior to mine.
No kidding. Really?
Guanajuato, it's mind-blowing. Like you are in a old colonial era city of Mexico where all of the colorful buildings surround you, and the center of town is kind of at the bottom of the hill, and all of the hills and mountains that surround the town are filled with these beautiful, colorful houses.
It's like the sides of a bowl.
Yeah. There are cobblestone streets that you walk on. There are endless tunnels, mazes of alleyways, color and music and light and art and culture and architecture everywhere you go. Like you could get lost in this city for probably a year and never hit every alleyway that they have down here. And it is so incredible here. I can't put it into words. It's something you have to experience. Like I said, it wasn't a day and a half, and I had to concede that Brittany's pick was actually better than mine.
Brittany, good choice.
Yeah, and thank you. I'm totally in love with Guanajuato too, and still trying to put into words how much I love it and why I love it. So I'll get back to you on that. But we also just did this drive from La Huasteca through the Sierra Gorda mountains to get to Guanajuato. And that drive through the mountains was absolutely incredible too, through the Sierra Gordas. So that was definitely a big highlight for me. And to answer your first question, since 2019 when we talked to you, we've done the whole Baja Peninsula. And we finished spending at least one night in all of the lower 48 states. And Caspian has done that too.
Yeah.
He's been able to hit all 48 states. So those are kind of our big travel milestones since we last talked to you.
Didn't you say you're in a Airbnb?
Right now, yeah.
Right now we are in Guanajuato.
What's it cost?
It averages out to, was it
$65?
Yeah, about $65 a night.
It's awesome. Okay.
Which is on the high end for Mexico, but we are like footsteps away from the center of town.
Okay.
And we're here through the holidays.
Oh yeah, and Chris, understand this. Like Brittany said, you could stay in Guanajuato for a lot cheaper than that in an Airbnb. I have really bad knees. I'm a disabled veteran. I served 20 years in the United States Coast Guard. And so my knees are really bad. And I can walk up hills all day long, but it gives me a lot of pain when I have to walk downhill. And so Brittany searched for an Airbnb that was kind of in the center of town where I wouldn't have to walk up and down hills while we were staying in Guanajuato. So we ended up in this beautiful, old, huge house. It's, I want to say, 4 stories, including the roof. It's got 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and we are literally steps. Like I could walk out our front door, hold my breath, and walk to Teatro Juarez, which is like the iconic main theater of the city of Guanajuato. So we are, when I say we're in the heart of everything, like you can't even park next to, within a block of our building. There's nowhere to park.
Got it. Okay. That's awesome. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So on the opposite side of that, what was an experience that was a major challenge for you, and what did you pull from that experience? Besides the breakfast
my walk with
journey.
Caspian today. So I can tell you a story about today. And I mean, if you'd asked me this question a month from now, I would probably share the same story. So today, Brittany was going to go to the dentist. Caspian and I walked with her to the dentist office. She got all settled there, and it was going to take her a while. We had decided we were going to go to lunch in this neighborhood called La Presa, which is a really nice neighborhood of Guanajuato. And so Brittany suggested that, hey, we should just go ahead and head on up there so that we could go exploring instead of just sitting at the dentist's office waiting for her, and that she would catch up with us. So Caspian and I took off, and we could have caught an Uber, which is available here, or a cab, but we just decided to walk it. Like I said, it was uphill, so that doesn't bother me as long as I'm not having to go downhill. And we started this walk. It was about a 20-minute walk on Google Maps, and we got about, I would say about halfway through the walk, which was all uphill, and we got into a really sketchy neighborhood. So here I am with my 4-year-old holding his little hand, and we're walking up like these flights of stairs that there must have been 300 stairs going up, you know, and he's not complaining, but we're doing it. But we get into this neighborhood, and there's a thing here where people keep their dogs on the roof of their homes for protection or for whatever other reason. That's where they keep them. And most of the time they're chained, but not always. And the favorite breed here seems to be some sort of pit bull mix type breed that's like really popular. So Caspian and I are walking up these steps, but the steps go up at such an angle and the roofs are flat. So at some point in time, as you're going past these houses, the steps almost come even with the tops of the roof of the building that you're passing. And there was at one point in time along this walk that we did today where there was this pit bull on the top of this thing, and he was just barking and pulling at the chain and trying to get towards where Caspian and I were, and there was nowhere for us to go. Like, we had to continue going up this route. And so I put Caspian on the other side of me. I have a fixed blade knife that I always carry on me. It's just like a little pocket knife for camping and whatnot, but it's always on my person. I actually unsheathed it and put it in my hand in case this animal tried to attack my son or myself. And we got through it without being attacked. But then once we got to the top of the steps, we are literally in the heart of this really, really sketchy neighborhood. And now Google is telling us to go down these alleyways in a place that I would not normally ever feel comfortable taking my wife, my son, or even going by myself. It was just not a good place to be. But we made it through there, and eventually we got to this descent that we had to go down, which was short, but it went into the more populated area. And in order to get down there, it was overgrown with bushes and trees and concrete that almost looked like it had spilled over from a mixing truck. There was no pathway. And I'm trying to navigate this with my son, and some of these bushes have thorns in them. And it was just a mess to get through there today. But this is the way Google was telling me to go, via the walking directions. So I had no clue as how to get there otherwise. Long story short, we made it down there. And when we got into the more populated area, believe it or not, it was one of the nicest neighborhoods in all of Guanajuato. And it was where we were headed. But the journey to get there was really sketch. So what I learned from that is that I need to do a little bit more research before I just, trust Google Maps to take me to where I want to go. Because, a 20-minute walk does not bother me. It doesn't bother Caspian. But I would never do that walk again. And it was really funny because we had just finished the walk, and Brittany texted me, and she said, "Hey, babe, I'm done with the dentist. I'm going to walk up and meet you." And I texted her back, 100% you are not walking here. Get in a cab or an Uber and come up. And that's how she met us.
Okay, I think I'm sitting on the edge of my seat right now.
Yeah, it was pretty sketch, Chris, not going to lie. And we love Mexico. And like I said, nothing happened. There has never been a time where there has been a real situation where we have felt that our security was threatened since we've been here. There's been some times like today where there's an imagined or a perceived threat that never, materialized, never came to be. So I don't want to get the impression out there to any listener not to come to Mexico. Mexico is a great, beautiful country filled with hospitable people, kind people, humble people, hardworking people. We love this place, and we would highly recommend anyone come to visit. Just do a little more research than I did.
You can wander into the wrong neighborhood in Chicago or Houston or
Seattle,
Los Angeles
Austin,
or pretty much anywhere.
Right.
So, it's...
You can walk about 15 minutes from where we live and be in a super sketch neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly.
And at night, maybe 5 feet.
Yeah, whole different world. And what are your recommendations on personal and vehicle insurance?
So you can get a full insurance policy for Mexico. Mexican law requires that you have at least liability coverage. Your U.S. policy will not suffice. You have to get a Mexican vehicle insurance policy that's at least liability, but you can go the whole 9 yards and insure your vehicle even against vandalism, not to mention theft. And there are so many different agencies out there. We've been using the same small agency out of California since 2019. Once you get out of Mexico, there is not any option to insure your vehicle unless maybe you're a millionaire. For the normal overlander, it's not financially feasible. So you'll get the insurance that is required by law, usually right around the border, and it only costs a few dollars, but that only protects the other person. It doesn't protect you. And so we knew that going into this journey, and that's a risk that we're willing to take and that a lot of overlanders are taking every day all around the world. Maybe some option will come out at some point. I don't know. There are different kinds of travel insurance, but as far as vehicle insurance for what we're doing, it just isn't available right now.
Anything specific that you guys are doing to keep your gear safe? Like if somebody broke into your vehicle to make sure that vital documents or maybe some hard drives or something are completely locked up and they can't be taken?
Well, when we're with the vehicle, everything we own is with us.
Yeah.
When we're not with the vehicle, like right now, Dauntless, he's parked in a secure parking area here in Guanajuato, and he's empty for the most part. I mean, pretty much everything we own comes with us. All of our important documents, all of our hard drives, our cameras,
computers.
all of those things are with us in the Airbnb. So there's really not any extra precautions that we're taking other than it. Wherever we are is where our stuff is.
Yeah, you want to keep things out of sight. So even if we're just going into a restaurant, and we do try and park where we can see the vehicle from inside the restaurant, but even then, we make sure everything is off of the dash and that people can't just look in, smash a window, and take something.
Right. And that brings to mind something else, Chris. So a lot of people ask about our dash setup, and some people laugh at our dash setup because it doesn't look like an airplane cockpit. I don't know if you've seen a lot of these Instagram overlanding accounts where it looks like they're driving a 747 and, they got the big screen and 3 iPads and a ham radio and, all this other stuff. And it's cool. I mean, hey, if that's your thing, more power to you. But when you're crossing international borders and when you're going across military checkpoints where they're using similar technology for their private communications, it raises eyebrows and you don't want to attract attention. So our setup is really simple. Our entire dash setup is done by 67 Designs, super easy, low profile, very clean install that we did with that. And what it allows us to do is when we go into a restaurant, for example, I can just unclip things like our Garmin GPS InReach Explorer Plus, like our phone, like our cameras. I can just unclip them and drop them out of sight. So we just don't leave anything visible. And then when we are like hanging out at a plaza or at a restaurant, we park the vehicle where we can see it. In addition to that, obviously we have a really nice alarm system on our vehicle that's monitored on my watch. It's monitored on my phone. I can tell you where it is. It's GPS tracked. I can tell you if anybody's close to it or messing with it. It's got a dash cam. So, you do everything you can to protect your assets. But at the end of the day, if anybody wants anything bad enough, they're going to get it, whether there's an alarm on it or not. And that's just life. That's the way it is.
What advice would you give your 10-year younger self?
For me, that's a hard question, and maybe Brittany has some thoughts on this. But for me, Chris, we started this idea of full-time travel about 10 years ago, right? So about 10 years ago is when we decided, or we were making decisions that we wanted to start traveling full-time. And so we've learned a lot along the way, and sure, we've made some mistakes, but we've done a lot of things right. And I think the advice that I would give myself is advice that I actually took or decisions that I actually made back then. It would be more of an encouragement like, hey, you did the right thing. And that is simply take an action that gets you closer to your dreams. Like there's a huge difference between making a decision to do something and then doing something, right? Like anyone can make a decision, but at some point in time, you've got to take an action that propels you towards your dreams. And my advice to myself or to anyone would be take an action. Don't just talk about it, do it. And we did that. And I think looking back, if I had to say anything that we could have done differently, maybe with our businesses, we could have had more of an exit strategy with them because we never really designed them to have an exit strategy, like to sell them off or do anything. And so that made things a little more complicated for us in the long run. My advice, I guess, would just be do it, make it happen. Like take the leap of faith, take the action that propels you towards your dreams. Don't just talk about doing it, but actually do it.
For me, sure, there's advice that I would give myself, but all the mistakes that we've made are what have brought us here. And I can look back on everything that we've experienced. And now I have so much confidence in the decisions that led us here, that I wouldn't trade those experiences and those mistakes. And I would definitely encourage my 10-year ago self, because I hadn't learned this yet 10 years ago, that work does not define you, and that work is a means to an end, and money is a means to an end. So don't worry about a career ladder. Don't compare yourself to other people. Don't let work rob you of the time that you should be spending with your loved ones or doing the things that make you you. Just give work the time that it needs to be, and then move on to something else. And 10 years ago, I mean, we were building businesses. Everything was work. 10 years ago, it's all we did. And we gave a lot of time and mental energy to work that we, in retrospect, didn't need to. But again, that's in retrospect.
And we've changed a lot, you guys. So if 5 years ago you guys had contacted us for a podcast and we were doing this, Brittany and I would have spent an hour preparing for that podcast. Like we would have, and at least the 30 minutes before we jumped on the phone with you, we would have said, okay, here are our talking points. Here's some notes. Here's some things we want to get in there. We literally walked in the door from a carnival outside where my son was jumping on a trampoline and Brittany was eating like gorditas stuffed with like sweet and condensed milk, like 3 minutes before you and I jumped on this call. Right. Great. And we did zero preparation. And that's the difference, right? I mean, we've just gotten to that point where this is our story. This is who we are. We don't need to prepare. We don't need to, try and figure out how to answer questions because we're living this life. Yeah. This is what we do. That right there is a blessing to us. And it makes us understand that we're realizing our life streams.
What restores your faith in humanity as you travel?
Oh, man, what a great question.
People in Mexico are incredible, and I just want to shout that from the rooftop, and I do it every opportunity. All the people we've met are so generous. They give beyond what they quote unquote can. They don't hold things back. They love their families. They love our family. And we've just had so many amazing experiences in Mexico time and time again. And even though we haven't overlanded beyond Mexico yet, from everything that we've heard, this is an experience that we're going to have over and over again in the other countries that we've been into. Our friends at Akela World, they have spent a lot of time traveling internationally, and they're in the middle of a series on Instagram reliving the different countries that they've been to. And almost every single post they say, before we went into this country, everybody said, don't go there. It's not safe. The people are so mean. This and this is going to happen. And then they went, and the people were incredible and hospitable and generous and just amazing human beings. And I cannot wait to meet all the people in these different countries and hopefully change some minds back in the United States about what people are like around the world.
Yeah, you talk about people who have very little and are so generous and hospitable. When we were here in 2019, we had an opportunity to go to, along with some friends, in a Jeep club that was in San Luis Potosí, to go out with them to this little village. And by village, I mean, it wasn't even a village. I mean, there was like
a crossroads.
Yeah, there was a dilapidated basketball court with one hoop, and that one hoop was broken. And the basketball court itself was broken. And we drove in there with 3 Jeeps. And we had blankets and toys and a few other things to give to the local community. And apparently it was this community that this Jeep Club had been ministering to for quite some time, and they had invited us to go. So we went with them. We ended up going onto this court, and there was nobody there except for these two little boys who, when they saw the Jeeps pulling in, they started yelling, "Soldados, soldados," which means soldiers, soldiers. Because they thought we were soldiers because we were driving Jeeps. And we parked on the basketball court. And within moments, out of seemingly nowhere, because you can't see any houses, there was like 30 people on this basketball court of all ages, men, women, children, and they were pushing the village elder in a wheelchair. I remember that. They were pushing onto the court, and then he came and he greeted us. And we provided some of these few things that we brought and that kind of thing, and we played games with them, had a really good time. And then the most humbling thing happened. These people invited us into their homes, which were no more than huts built out of muds and sticks. They invited us into their homes to share with us what they had, which was their food, their tamales, and they had this 2-liter bottle of Coke, which you would think, oh, so what? So they shared a 2-liter bottle of Coke with you? There isn't a convenience store for 30 miles from this village. We didn't bring that Coke, and none of these people had vehicles. So somebody somehow managed to do a 30-mile one-way trip to a convenience store and come back just so that they could have this 2-liter bottle of Coke in their home. And rather than saving it for themselves, when we arrived, they poured it gladly into a glass to share with us. You talk about what restores your faith in humanity? When you experience something like that, the generosity of people who have nothing but are willing to give everything, that is humanity that is golden.
Thank you. That's awesome.
If you could put any message on every billboard in America and Mexico, what would it be?
Any message on every billboard in Mexico.
And the U.S. Like the same message.
Man, what a tough question, Lisa.
I don't know how I would say it poetically, but I think it would be something about the border. And it would be the idea that we're all the same. And there's so much interchange over this thing we call the border, when really we all have families, we all go to work, we all wash our clothes. You know, we're people.
Yeah.
And that can be said of everyone the world over. And for some reason, there can be so much fear of this other, even within the United States, right? It's like, you're so different from me, so I'm going to assume all these things about you because we believe different things, when we're all people and we really have so much in common. So that was a really long billboard, but something like
awesome.
And while Brittany was sharing that, I was thinking about the answer to your question from my perspective too. And this is going to sound really self-promotional, but please don't take it that way. Brittany and I locked ourselves in our RV when we decided to create Hourless Life and burn down all of our businesses and start traveling around the world. And we came up with a family mission statement. And that family mission statement spells out the word less, L-E-S-S, and it stands for love, explore, study, and share. And I think that's what I'd put on there. And I wouldn't even put Hourless Life. I wouldn't even put, any of our, hey, this is our website, go check it out. It would just be that. Love on other people. Be more interested in the person who's making your tamales than the tamales themselves. Explore the world around you. There's so much to see. Study, get educated, find out, learn about the history and the culture and what makes things work and why things are the way that they are. And then whatever you learn, share that with other people so that they can be enlightened and grow and become more of one united global community. So I think that's what I would put. Love, explore, study, share, which is our family mission statement.
And in talking to you, I think we've just been enlightened. That's great. So as we wrap it up, let's go through a few fun details about you guys. What is a favorite genre of music?
You got to hear Caspian's playlist. It is the most eclectic playlist ever. Go ahead, babe.
Yeah, mine is like oldies, 50s and 60s music.
Eric, we do need you to sing us your rendition of Roxanne again.
Oh, which brings me to mind 80s rock. So I love classic rock, and 80s rock is mine. And Caspian goes the whole gambit. He goes from 50s and 60s music all the way to Nirvana. So he likes a little bit of everything.
Just so you know, we got a good laugh out of that on your YouTube channel. First, it was a little uncomfortable, and then it was just pure laughter.
It's kind of how I felt when we did that, yeah. And Caspian still talks about that. He says every time that song plays on our playlist, he'll say, "Let's never ever do that again, Daddy."
What's a favorite drink in the morning to get you going?
Mine is just coffee. And man, I don't know where they got it from. I need to ask, but they provided some amazing local coffee that I'm drinking here in Guanajuato. So I got to find out where they sourced it from.
And I don't really eat breakfast, but I do have a staple, which is they have these bakeries all over Mexico, traditional bakeries called panaderias. And in the panaderias, they make pan dulce, which is like cookies and sweetbreads and those types of things. And there's this one cookie that they make called a polvoron, which means a dust cookie. And there is nothing better than a polvoron and a glass of cold milk. And you just dip that polvoron in the cold milk, and best thing ever.
What's a favorite beverage at night to wind down after a long day?
It depends what the weather is like. I do like a glass of red wine before bed, but man, when it's cold, I need to brew some tea. So it's one or the other.
And my favorite drink of choice is called tamarindo, and it's from the tamarind plant, but it's everywhere here, and it's almost like a carbonated drink that you would buy, like an apple soda, sort of. But it's called tamarindo, and it's just got a very unique flavor. And the only place I've ever found it is really in Mexican grocery stores in the United States or in Mexico.
What's your best advice to aspiring overlanders and adventure enthusiasts?
I think I said it earlier. My best advice is start with what you have. Have the 5 basics covered that I talked about earlier, which is water, food, shelter, warmth, and sleep. Have those things covered and go. Just get out there and go. Because in doing that, you're not spending any extra money to start your adventure, and you'll figure out along the way the things that you specifically want to add to those 5 essentials that are good for you, your family, and your type of travel, right? Because everybody's different. Some people want to go off-grid completely. They don't want to have anything to do with cities. And some people, like Brittany and I, we love to go into these colonial cities and spend time there. Some people want to go up high into the mountains, and some people would rather be low in the rivers and doing some fly fishing. And so your build out, your gear, all of that stuff is going to depend on your individual style of travel, but you're really not going to know what that looks like until you get out there and start experiencing it. So my biggest piece of advice is have the 5 essentials covered and then go. And just go and start making a list of the things that you wish you had. Make a list of the things that you took along with you that you didn't use, and then start to hone in your pack out and continue going and pursue your dreams. Make it happen.
And I think I would just encourage aspiring and new overlanders to know that a big part of overlanding is intentional self-deprivation. And we give up a lot to overland. We're very impacted by the weather. We're dealing with a very small storage area, so we're having to give up a lot. There's a lot of logistics that we don't anticipate. And so there can be challenges challenges in that deprivation and hard days. And just to realize that those days are more often at the beginning of the journey when we're still getting our feet under us, and that it all shakes out in the end, and those days become fewer and fewer.
How can people learn more about you and your traveling adventures?
We are Hourless Life, and we are Hourless Life on everything. So we have our website, hourlesslife.com. We have our YouTube channel and all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Pinterest. And just recently, we launched our Patreon account, and that's become a really special place where we share a lot of personal and behind-the-scenes details, all those silly mistakes that we're making, and it's a really special place.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that, Brittany said where we're at, on all the socials on our website. But if you really want to get to know us, ask us. See, one of the things that people may not realize is this is all we do. We don't do anything else. And so if you comment, if you look on our YouTube channel, we respond to every comment, and we get thousands of them. If you message us on Instagram, we respond to that message. I mean, it might not be that day, but at some point in time, we're going to respond to you. So if you have a question, or if you just want to get to know us, ask us. Like, don't be shy. Reach out to us. You have our permission to reach out to us and ask us anything. You can ask us about how we make money, how we use the restroom, how we educate our son, why we've made decisions. I mean, we get these types of questions all the time, and we're happy to answer them. We're happy to be a resource.
Any more information you'd like to give, or useful resources that our listeners should check out?
I think we're good. We've covered a lot of ground, and we're looking forward to sharing the rest of our journey with the wonderful Overland community. And we're really happy y'all are back.
Yeah. Yay for GHT.
Thank you. Yeah, we are so relieved.
We're taking the leap.
Yeah. Oh, that's hard to explain. That's a whole nother podcast.
There you go.
But you guys, thank you. You are wonderful. The knowledge that you've got from your experiences, your willingness to share that openly with everybody else is really awesome. We've learned a lot about overlanding, what we would like to do, what we would not like to do, like all of those things. And we just so appreciate that. And we so appreciate you guys. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having us. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, you bet. Take care, guys.